So in our last video, I redrew or traced onto tracing paper my first image that I've chosen for my Metamorphosis project. And I've traced over onto tracing paper the last image of my Metamorphosis project. And I used tracing paper to then combine those into one image that is going to be my midway point. So this is the drawing I had after that last video of my midway point. So what I want to do now is to create the drawing number 2 that's going to be between my midway point and my first drawing. And I want this to be a 5-step metamorphosis. So I have 3 of those 5 drawings. So now I'm going to work near the beginning of my metamorphosis, and I'm going to combine drawing 1 with drawing number 3 to get my second drawing. So that is going to entail me taking another sheet of tracing paper to create this metamorphosis drawing. So I'm going to cut off this one sheet I haven't used yet in this quadrant. And I can either put this off to the side to use later, or I can use it for this next step, which is what I'm going to do. If you choose to keep it for later, well, then you can get another sheet of tracing paper and fold it into quarters and cut at least one line of those quarter drawings so that you can flip your tracing paper around. So I want to combine number 1 and number 3 together. So I don't want to see number 5. So that can be as simple as taking a smaller sheet of drawing paper and placing that in there so that it's not distracting from my 2 I want to concentrate on. So let me grab a piece of paper and do that. Okay, so I've just grabbed my little 5x7 sheet that I was using to trace inside of my sketchbook when I was originally drawing my images. And that's just going to kind of block out that one image. Now you could also cut it off, but I figured the fewer small pieces of paper I have floating around, the better. So I'm going to layer my midway drawing and my original drawing over top of each other. And just like in the previous process, I want to try to get a halfway point between drawing number 1 and my midway drawing. So maybe for this I have a little bit more texture of the center of my flower. Maybe they're just becoming larger. And again, I'm going to sketch this out. So with them becoming larger, they have gotten a little bit bigger, but haven't quite met the halfway point structure I have. Maybe my petals are starting to merge together and starting that process of fattening up and drooping. But I'm already seeing here in doing this process that I'm having to come and meet the lines I had in my midway point. And I don't want them to be exactly the same, because in each stage I want to show some change and some growth. So remember in our last video how I talked about why my midway point in my originals looks so much different from this midway point I ended up with in the last video. And that was because as I started to draw my second stage drawing, going from step 1 to step 3, or the middle part, I realized that when I kept my petals this short in that midway point, well then it didn't really give me much room to play around with their length or showing them starting to really stretch and droop in my second drawing as much as I wanted them to. Again, remember, I want to show some movement through each step, and whether that is the length of something or how much something may shrink or something may blow up, I want to show some change in each of my 5 stages. So knowing that, this is where I would have to possibly go back and change my midway drawing. So maybe this could end up being a nice drawing number 2, and maybe I now need to reconsider what my midpoint drawing would look like. So if that is the case, then I may want to layer these all down together. And I know it kind of gets a little confusing looking at it, and on camera it's a little bit more difficult to focus, but in person I can focus a little bit more on each parts of each different drawing. And this may be where I want to then take my new sheet of tracing paper and create a new midway drawing. I'm going to now take this new sheet of paper, tracing paper, and lay it over top of these 3. And if it does become too difficult to see, well then you are free to take this and draw it in pen to darken it up, some sort of other darker medium. And I'm going to now adjust that second drawing. And in fact, I probably don't even need my first one there. That second drawing, so I can get more of a transition from 2 to 3. So this is where I want to again see some growth. So maybe my center part there flattens out a little bit. Maybe I'm just getting a hint of some of the textures there. I want to again start getting more droopiness, to start extending these petals down into my balloon shape, but still have some petal quality showing so that they're not completely obliterated. So, you know, my flower still has a chance to show. And here is where I'm going to stretch my leaves out more. I want to change that. I want to bring this outer edge of the leaf to start making the outer edge of the balloon. And again, allow my stem to change a little bit. Want to stretch this leaf up a little bit more, maybe have this one overlap here and start to lose more of my stem, and maybe something here from the lines that separate the leaves start creating my shapes in my basket. So that is a possibility. So if that is the case, well now I have my second drawing already finished. If I open that up, and a new midway point, and my first and my 5th one. So it's difficult to say this is exactly how you're going to do it, because as we know with any type of artwork, there's going to be a period where you have to go back and adjust what you have to improve upon your final outcome. So as I demonstrated there, what I originally thought to be a good midway point, when I went to overlap these two to create my second drawing, my first metamorphosis of the flower changing into the hot air balloon, it didn't leave me a lot of room to change from this petal shapes to these petal shapes. So I realized then that my midway point, I'm going to have to stretch those petals down even further and change the shape of what's left of the flower in that metamorphosis into more of the hot air balloon starting to emerge. Now that being said, the same thing is going to occur with the last two, going from midway point to end drawing. So in this case, when I look at this, this could have been a nice midway point between those two. It just didn't work for my first drawing because I could easily see these petals stretching further down to start creating some of the texture I need for the hot air balloon, starting to smooth out more. But since it doesn't work in the opposite direction, I now have to balance this out. So if this is now my new midway point drawing, and I think I want to get some of my texture lines in here, or coloration lines on my petals. And again, I'm starting to simplify things as I do that. Then I'm going to take my new step 5, overlay it with my, sorry, did I say step 5? My new step 3, overlay it with my step 5, and now come up with my 4th step. So let's take a look here. If I cover up that one. So overlapping my step 5 and my new midway point, I have room there to change this. So maybe my upper part here shrinks and changes a little bit more into the shape I want at the top of the hot air balloon. Maybe my petals here and my leaf shape start to combine. So I start getting more of those details of my hot air balloon. So maybe the leaf shapes loop together and start to become those bottom sections of my hot air balloon. My stem now flattens out a little bit, and these once leafy shapes are going to start combining, and I'm going to get a little bit more detail in my basket shape. So this flower over here maybe starts ballooning out more, and this one starts flattening out to create my sections. So I'm starting to get more of my hot air balloon shape. I'm losing more of my flower shape. So this, of course, still needs some more adjustment. These are just some quick examples and demonstrations of how you start figuring this process out. So as I mentioned, don't be afraid to go back and change things. If what you originally drew as one step in your metamorphosis ends up not working out, well then see if it will fit in another area of the metamorphosis and maybe change the step it was originally. So as I mentioned, what originally in this demonstration I planned as my middle step, I realized that when I overlapped this middle step with my first step, it really didn't give me a lot of room to change my flower before I reached what just looks like the middle step. So that prompted me to then change my middle step to lose a little bit more of the flower petals I had originally planned to keep in my middle step, but still have enough of them there that it kind of still looks like a sad, wilting, dying flower. And then because I changed my middle step, then that gave me something to work with for my fifth step. Now this could also be the opposite. You could have a good beginning, second, and middle step on the first go, and then realize that when you lay down and overlap step 3 with your final step 5, there's not enough room there to change things or develop things. So it's going to be a constant judging and adjustment in the drawing phase. So what your goal is to eventually come up with 5 drawings that you feel shows a good metamorphosis of one object into the other. So I have here my originals. So here is my first drawing. This is stage 2 of my metamorphosis. See if we can get them all on here. And my midway point. My 4th step. And then finally my hot air balloon. So that is the thought process while creating the stages of your metamorphosis. I can't say it enough. Don't be afraid to go back and make some changes along the way to any of your second, third, or fourth steps so that you have something that moves and changes from the first object to the 5th object with some fluidity. In our next video, we will then talk about transferring our drawings that we have decided for step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to our drawing paper and to begin the application of our values.